June 8, 632 AD. The Prophet of Islam was dead. Muhammad ibn Abdullah died in the house of his wife Aisha in Medina, his head resting in her lap at the age of 62. The cause, according to the sources, was fever, possibly complications from a poisoning attempt 2 years earlier at Khaybar, possibly something else. The exact cause has been debated by historians for 14 centuries. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Within days, the Arabian Peninsula began to come apart. The logic of what happened next is not difficult to understand if you know how the Arabian tribal system worked. Dozens of tribes had pledged allegiance to Muhammad, to the man, to the prophet, to the specific individual whose spiritual authority had given the new Muslim state its coherence. When that man died, many of those tribes concluded, with perfectly rational tribal logic, that their obligations died with him. They had submitted to Muhammad. They had not submitted to Abu Bakr, an older companion of the Prophet, chosen as the first caliph by a council of senior Muslims in the hours after Muhammad's death, a man of genuine piety and considerable political intelligence, but without the one thing that had held everything together. He was not the Prophet. The rebellion spread across Arabia like fire across dry grass. Some tribes simply stopped paying the zakat, the obligatory alms tax that funded the Muslim state. Some tribes declared apostasy outright and returned to their pre-Islamic practices. Some tribes rallied around new leaders who claimed prophetic authority of their own. Men who understood that the power vacuum left by Muhammad's death was an opportunity that would not remain open forever. In the north, Talha ibn Khalid of the Banu Asad declared himself a prophet and gathered an army of approximately 15 to 20,000 warriors. In the east, Musaylima ibn Habib, who had actually claimed prophethood during Muhammad's own lifetime and been dismissed with a contempt that had only hardened his following, controlled the fertile Yamama region with an army that some sources put at 40,000 men. He had already defeated 2 Muslim armies sent against him before Khalid arrived. Abu Bakr, the new caliph, looked at the map of Arabia and saw a state that was dissolving in real time. He had one instrument capable of stopping it. "Go," he said to Khalid ibn al-Walid, according to al-Tabari, "and let nothing stand between you and victory." Muhammad died in June 632 AD. Within weeks, Arabia was in open revolt. 2 self-proclaimed prophets had raised armies of tens of thousands. 2 Muslim commanders had already been defeated trying to stop them. This is the campaign that saved Islam, and the man who ran it did so in less than a year, across the entire Arabian Peninsula without losing a single engagement. Subscribe, like the video, and let's get into it. Abu Bakr's response to the rebellions was not what most of his advisors recommended. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the man who would become the second caliph and one of the most important figures in early Islamic history, argued for a measured response. The rebellions were widespread and the Muslim state was genuinely fragile. Pushing too hard, too fast, against too many enemies simultaneously risked overextension. Some tribes, Umar argued, should be given time and negotiation. Not every rebellion required an immediate military response. Pragmatism demanded flexibility. Abu Bakr listened to this argument carefully. Then he rejected it completely. "By God," Abu Bakr said, according to al-Tabari, in a speech that the sources record with particular care because it defined the entire strategic approach of the Ridda campaigns, "If they withhold from me even the rope they used to give the Prophet as part of the zakat, I will fight them for it." It was not a metaphor. It was a statement of strategic principle, that any concession to the rebellions would signal weakness that would accelerate rather than slow the dissolution of the state. The Muslim community had to fight on every front simultaneously, project absolute commitment to the defense of every obligation the tribes had accepted under Muhammad, and win fast enough that the rebellions could not consolidate into something too large to defeat. Abu Bakr organized 11 military corps and sent them across Arabia. The weakest corps went to the least dangerous fronts. The strongest corps, the main punch as the sources call it, went to the most dangerous front. Khalid ibn al-Walid commanded it, with approximately 4,000 men drawn from the Muhajirin and the Ansar, the original Muslim community's best fighters. The other corps would wait for news of Khalid's operations before committing to their own. If Khalid moved fast enough and decisively enough, his victories would demoralize the remaining rebellions. If he failed, if the strongest Muslim corps was defeated, the consequences were too serious to contemplate. Khalid marched out of Medina in August 632 AD. He had a peninsula to put back together. His first target was Talha ibn Khalid at Buzaka, a well in north-central Arabia that had become the gathering point for the rebel tribes of the Banu Asad, the Banu Ghatafan and portions of the Hawazin and the Tay. Together, Taleha's coalition numbered somewhere between 15 and 20,000 men. Khalid had 4,000. He did not march directly to battle. This is one of the most instructive aspects of Khalid's operational approach during the Ridda campaigns. His consistent understanding that the composition of his army before a battle was as important as his tactics during it. He was moving through tribal Arabia, and tribal Arabia operated on networks of loyalty and calculation that a purely military campaign could not address. Every tribe that could be separated from Taleha's coalition before the battle made the battle easier. Every tribe that could be brought over to the Muslim side made his army stronger. He sent ahead of him Adi ibn Hatim, chief of the Tay tribe, a devout Muslim, a man whose people had been supporting Taleha's rebellion primarily from tribal solidarity rather than genuine conviction. Adi negotiated. The Tay withdrew their contingent from Taleha's army and brought 500 horsemen to reinforce Khalid instead. Then the Jadala submitted without fighting, adding 1,000 warriors. By the time Khalid arrived at Buzaka, his 4,000 had grown to 6,000, and Taleha's coalition had shrunk by the same tribes. Taleha watched this happen and understood what it meant. He was a man of genuine ability. Al-Tabari treats him with the particular respect that the sources reserve for opponents who are actually dangerous, and he had built his following on a combination of tribal prestige, military reputation, and the claim to prophetic authority that gave his movement ideological coherence. He had positioned his army well at Buzaka, using the terrain to maximize the defensive advantages of his position. "Your prophet brings you promises of paradise," he reportedly told his warriors before the battle, according to traditions preserved by al-Tabari. "I bring you victory in this world. Which would you prefer?" The warriors who stayed with him chose his answer. The battle at Buzaka in mid-September 632 AD was hard. The sources describe it as one of the most intense engagements of the entire Ridda campaign, close-quarters combat across the plain, Muslim cavalry charges breaking rebel lines, the Banu Asad and Ghatafan fighting with genuine conviction rather than the token resistance of men who have already decided they are going to lose. What broke the battle was not a cavalry charge or a tactical maneuver. It was a defection. Uyana ibn Hizn, chief of the Fazara section of the Ghatafan, one of Taleha's most important allied commanders, looked at the battle as it was developing and made the calculation that men of his particular type always make at the critical moment. Taleha was losing. The Fazara could stay and die for a lost cause, or they could leave and negotiate with the winner. Uyana withdrew his contingent from the field. The Banu Asad, watching their most important allies abandon them mid-battle, broke. Taleha himself fled north toward Syria, abandoning his army, his following, and his claim to prophecy in a single moment. He would years later convert to Islam and serve as a competent Muslim commander, a detail that says something about the particular pragmatism of 7th century Arabian tribal politics. But on the day of Buzaka he was running. Khalid captured Uyana and sent him to Medina in chains. He accepted the surrender of the Banu Asad. He kept moving. Between Buzaka and Yamama lay Buda, and at Buda the most controversial episode of Khalid's entire career. Malik ibn Nuwayra was the chief of the Banu Yarbu, a branch of the Banu Tamim. He was, by all accounts, a man of considerable personal quality, a poet, a warrior, a tribal leader of genuine stature. He had been a Muslim under Muhammad and had served as a tax collector for the Prophet. After Muhammad's death, his position became ambiguous. He stopped collecting zakat. He may have declared apostasy. He may simply have been waiting to see how the political situation resolved before committing either way. The sources genuinely disagree, and modern historians have noted that the accounts of his position were almost certainly shaped by later writers with agendas. What is not disputed is what happened when Khalid arrived at Buda. He captured Malik ibn Nuwayra. He questioned him. The exchange, recorded by al-Tabari with the particular care that historians apply to events they know will be questioned, was a confrontation between two men who both understood exactly what was at stake. "Do you testify that there is no God but God and that Muhammad is his messenger?" Khalid asked, according to al-Tabari. "Your companion used to say that," Malik said, using the phrase "your companion" to refer to Muhammad rather than the Prophet or the Messenger of God. That phrase, "your companion," was the center of the dispute that followed. To Khalid, it was evidence of apostasy, a refusal to acknowledge the prophetic authority of Muhammad that meant Malik had placed himself outside the protection of Islam. To others present, including Khalid's own companion Abu Qatada al-Ansari, it was ambiguous, perhaps insolence, perhaps theological imprecision, not necessarily evidence of apostasy warranting death. Khalid ordered Malik executed. That same night, according to the sources, he married Malik's widow Tamim, a woman of considerable beauty, the sources note, and a marriage that was either a political act to bind the tribe or something more personal, depending on which source you read and how you read it. The reaction in Medina was severe. Umar ibn al-Khattab demanded Khalid's removal and prosecution. The execution of Malik, he argued, had been unjustified. A man killed for words rather than for clear apostasy, his wife taken by his killer on the same night. Umar used the word unlawful. Abu Bakr protected Khalid. "I will not sheathe the sword that God has drawn against the unbelievers," Abu Bakr said, according to multiple sources, when Umar pressed him to dismiss Khalid. He paid the blood money for Malik's death from the state treasury, an acknowledgement that something improper had occurred without a full concession that the execution had been murder. He ordered Khalid to continue his campaign. Khalid continued. But the incident at Buda followed him for the rest of his life, the single episode that his enemies, including Umar, would return to again and again as evidence that the sword of God could cut in directions that God had not authorized. The campaign against Musaylima at Yamama in December 632 AD was the most dangerous thing Khalid ibn al-Walid had ever attempted. Musaylima ibn Habib was not a fraud in the sense of a man who privately knew he was lying and was cynically exploiting the credulity of his followers. He was, by the evidence of the sources, a genuine religious phenomenon, a man with real charisma, a real following based on real conviction, and a military capability that had already demonstrated itself against two Muslim armies. His followers, the Banu Hanifa of the Yamama region, were among the best fighters in Arabia. Their swords, al-Tabari notes, were of superior quality to the weapons of most other tribes. And they were motivated. The Banu Hanifa were not fighting for tribal autonomy or to avoid paying taxes. They were fighting for their profit against the false claims of Medina. Khalid arrived at Yamama with approximately 13,000 men, his own corps combined with the remnants of Shurabil ibn Hazana's force, which had been defeated by Musaylima before Khalid arrived. Musaylima reportedly had 40,000, though as with all ancient battle figures the precise number is contested. What is not contested is that the Banu Hanifa outnumbered Khalid significantly and had the confidence of men who had already beaten two Muslim armies. The plain of Akraba, where the battle was fought, was open ground that gave Musaylima's numerical advantage its full weight. The first assault failed. Khalid drove his forces forward across the plain with everything he had. The Banu Hanifa held. Their line did not break. It absorbed the Muslim assault and pushed back with the particular discipline of warriors fighting on home ground for something they genuinely believed in. The Muslim advance stalled. The second assault failed. The third assault failed. 3 times Khalid attacked. 3 times the Banu Hanifa pushed him back. This is the moment that the sources treat with the particular care reserved for events that challenge the narrative of Khalid's invincibility, and with the honesty of historians who understood that the truth of a great commander is tested precisely in the moments when things are not going well. After the third failed assault, Khalid sat with Thabit ibn Qays al-Ansari, one of his most experienced commanders, a man of the original Ansar who had been Muslim since the beginning. "The Bedouin contingents are weakening us," Thabit said, according to al-Tabari. "Their hearts are not in this fight. They are dragging the line apart from the inside." Khalid looked at the Banu Hanifa positions. He looked at his own army. "Separate them," he said. "Put the Muhajirin on one wing, the Ansar on the other. Keep the Bedouins out of the center. Let the men who have never broken be the ones who go forward." The fourth assault was different. The Muhajirin and the Ansar, the core of the original Muslim community, men who had been fighting for this faith since before it had a state, went forward with the particular intensity of people who understand that they are the last line between an idea and its extinction. The Banu Hanifa absorbed the assault, then absorbed it again, then began slowly to compress. Musaylima's forces fell back toward a walled garden, a large enclosed space with high walls that became, in the final phase of the battle, a killing ground. Approximately 7,000 of Musaylima's remaining warriors took shelter inside the garden and closed the gate. The Muslims could not get in. Then a warrior named al-Bara ibn Malik asked his companions to lift him onto the wall. They lifted him. He jumped alone into the garden, single-handedly killing the guards at the gate, taking wounds that should have killed him, opening the gate from the inside. The Muslims poured through. The fighting inside the garden was, by every account, the most brutal of the entire battle. Men fighting in an enclosed space with no room to maneuver, no possibility of retreat, no outcome available other than victory or death. The place became known afterward as Hadikat al-Maut, the Garden of Death. Musaylima died there. The man who killed him was Washir ibn Harb, The same Ethiopian javelin thrower who had killed Hamza, Muhammad's uncle, at the Battle of Uhud a decade earlier. The same javelin. The same man. Thrown into the stomach of the false prophet of the Banu Hanifa. Then Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan cut off Musaylima's head. When the news spread across the battlefield that Musaylima was dead, the resistance collapsed. The Garden of Death had claimed approximately 7,000 lives in a single afternoon. The Banu Hanifa surrendered. The last major armed rebellion against the Muslim state of Medina was over. Khalid stood in the ruins of the garden and looked at what the battle had cost. The sources record that he was among the most decorated of veterans. Wounds on his arms, his torso, his legs. Men who fought at Yamama described it afterward as the day the Muslim community came closest to dying. Of the men who had memorized the Quran completely, the Hafiz, the human repositories of the revealed text in an era before a complete written compilation. Dozens had been killed in a single afternoon. Their deaths were one of the reasons Abu Bakr eventually ordered the first compilation of the Quran into a written text. "We almost lost everything today," one of Khalid's commanders said that night, according to a tradition in Al-Tabari. Khalid was quiet for a moment. "We did not lose," he said. "That is all that matters tonight. Tomorrow we count the cost." He looked north. "And the day after tomorrow we march to Iraq."